My in-laws moved in without even letting us know. I thought they were just delivering a big package, but then they popped their heads out of the front door and said, "We ain't gonna pay rent or do any chores, so take care of us. I wanna stay in the big room, so help me with moving my stuff, will ya?" I couldn't believe what they were saying after they just showed up out of nowhere. My father-in-law, Austin, and brother-in-law, Owen, just barged into the house and started giving orders about moving things. It was so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. "It's totally fine," I said with a big grin and immediately called my husband. "He should be home soon. I wonder what he's gonna say when he sees this mess." After all, the ones who mocked me were my in-laws. Just as I thought, my husband came home. As expected, my husband was scolding Austin and Owen. But then, I saw a paper he showed to both of them and couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to use this house as you please." And in the end, it was me who moved out. My name is Catherine Miller, a 34-year-old remote worker. Due to some family circumstances, I chose a job that I could do from home. I can do house chores, and it's nice to easily look up anything like a new recipe at any time. By the way, I met my husband, Michael Miller, during the peak of the flu. We wouldn't have met if it weren't for the dating app. Michael is 35 years old and works as a carpenter. Back then, Michael was always on business trips, so we hardly had time to see each other. But Michael said he wanted me to live together so I wouldn't feel lonely. I fell for him in an instant and started thinking about marriage. Considering I was already past 30, it seemed better to hurry things up. But, due to my long-standing irregular periods, it was hard for us to conceive. Michael says it's okay, but being a woman, I've had some hopes. My doctor told me, but I knew the odds of getting pregnant were extremely low. After opening up and crying to Michael, I felt emotionally stable. I often wonder if I've caused Michael a lot of troubles. Knowing that Michael was thinking of me made it easier to give in. We decided to live a happy life together. To overcome the pandemic, which we didn't know when it'd end, we decided to spend time positively. But then, Michael's father, Austin Miller, gave us a call. It seemed he was complaining about not receiving any greetings from us, and for once, Michael was visibly irritated. "Catherine, I'm glad we greeted your parents, but if you meet my dad, you might feel uncomfortable, you know? Do you really dislike him that much? But don't you think we should greet each other's parents at least?" "Yeah, you're right. Maybe we should pay a visit to my parents' house." The reluctance was evident on Michael's face. He really didn't want to go and meet them. I could see the deep frown on his forehead as he prepared to head to his parents' home. Throughout, Michael kept like, "I don't want to go and I don't want to see him." I could tell he really didn't want to meet them. It became evident just how much he despised his father. To be on the safe side, we decided to bring some pastries as a gift, to which Michael begrudgingly agreed. I wish I knew what had transpired between them, but Michael hadn't wanted to talk about the past. Or rather, he seemed reluctant to discuss it. Even though I didn't want to pry into something that might upset him, I found myself wishing he would open up. I realized how much Michael wanted to avoid going to his parents' house. But then, we were on our way to greet Michael's family. I was sure we were gonna get some sarcastic remarks, but I mustered the courage and left the house. Given that stress often gives me stomach aches, Michael looked at me with concern and asked, "Are you okay? Should we do this another time?" "I think I'm fine. It wouldn't be right if we didn't greet your father, right?" It was the same father who complained over the phone. There seemed to be an air that suggests he was not gonna forgive us easily. It felt more troublesome than anything. Michael seemed to feel the same way, as he was eager to drive. Maybe to keep himself distracted. I sensed that there must have been some issues at his childhood home. Meeting such a father-in-law could be tiresome, but I've never regretted choosing Michael. I love the kindness Michael shows me and his occasional clumsiness. It's those little things that mean the most. If I ever feel uncomfortable about our relationship with his father, we should just distance ourselves immediately. Lost in thought, we eventually arrived at Michael's childhood home. It wasn't too far from the apartment where Michael and I live. It was within walking distance, a short stroll away if we ever felt like it. When I entered his house, a beaming his father greeted me with a big smile. Michael gave his father a slight glare as he stepped inside. Then, from a room deeper inside the house, I could hear Michael's raised voice. "You can't just mooch off Dad because you're unemployed and stay at home all day. How old do you even think you are? Shut up." What I do isn't any of your business. The two bickered like brothers. Owen Miller defiantly held his own. To sum up the argument, Owen has been living an unemployed lifestyle since his late 20s. There was no real reason for his unemployment, like health issues. It was simply because he felt jobs didn't suit him. While Michael understood the desire for a job that fits, it was frustrating to see Owen not even looking. His father was no different, constantly bringing home different women and ending relationships time after time. Michael always said that there's no way they could be happy living like that. I'm not here to babysit the two of you. I came to announce that Catherine and I are getting married. Yeah, got it. If you want to brag about being happy, do it somewhere else. I'm good if I can just live with Dad. Owen laughed off the confrontation, deeply engrossed in his video game. Annoyed by the sight, Michael was about to react when we realized his father was looming over us. Catherine, huh? If you're gonna marry Michael, you better be ready to take care of his family. Once you got married to Michael, we're family. You get that? While that may be true, I don't think it's mandatory. What did you just say, young lady? You've got some nerve. I'll teach you some respect for your elders. Suddenly, with his father raising his voice, I snapped back to reality, taken aback. Michael quickly pulled my hand, and we managed to leave the house. I felt a wave of fear as his father, with a face like a terrifying monster, began chasing us. Something's off about that family. I couldn't stop shaking at the thought. Even when we tried to decide on an apartment, his father would always beat us to it and decide for us. To prevent such incidents from happening again, Michael and I decided to consider moving. Thanks to my job in web-related work, I can work anywhere with just a computer. There was no issue on my end, but the problem was Michael's job. Even if he's enjoyed doing household chores, he's been also the owner of a carpentry business. He often travels for work, so I ended up handling the moving process. While there was an inevitable aspect to it, there was honestly also a chance that his father and the jobless Owen might visit. Given my knack for bad premonitions turning true, all I could do was hope they wouldn't come. In the meantime, I decided to proceed with the moving arrangements, considering Michael's opinion as well. I wanted to get this sorted before they possibly visited our house. After the moving process was done, I was finally able to shift to working from home. There was still some work left contacting a representative regarding a web video project I had discussed before. While I was messaging and talking on the phone, I heard someone knocked on the front door. If it were Michael, he'd just come in without knocking. Who could it be? Could it be his father and Owen? As I thought this, I heard a shouting voice from behind the door. It was his father, Austin. What should I do? Michael wasn't back yet. It seemed I was gonna have to handle this situation. Maybe I should just talk to him. I ended the call with the client and headed to the front door. From the aggressive knocking, I could only think of his father. I didn't know what he wanted, but if he was here to disturb our life, I'd appreciate it if he left. I was like hello, lightly responded and opened the door slightly. Then, Owen forcefully pushed the door open, placing a large bag at the entrance with a pleased look. Owen dramatically sat down and was like, I'm exhausted. Hey Austin, what's all this about? We couldn't pay the mortgage on our place, so we sold it and decided to move. Naturally, we won't pay any rent or do any chores, so take care of us. With a self-centered look on their faces, his father and Owen entered our apartment. Owen, carrying his baggage, was looking around to decide which room to occupy. His father, after placing his huge bag in the living room, started complaining about the size of the room. Come on, this apartment is meant for 2 people, you know? If we're going to have 4 people living here, we might need to find another place. But Michael and I had already decided on our next place. Even though our moving day was just around the corner. I'm gonna take the upstairs room. Catherine, can you tidy up this room for me? Before that, haven't you put too much stuff in the living room? There's no space for us to even eat together. I was speechless at the audacity of them who just said whatever they pleased. I decided to inform Michael about the situation. Suddenly, I heard the sound of someone punching a wall, probably out of anger. However, the words I heard afterward were a relief. At least I wouldn't have to take care of these 2 anymore. But due to work circumstances, Michael couldn't come back to the apartment. It was up to me to handle that situation. Facing 2 men alone as a woman felt unsafe, so I called someone. The person on the phone was a friend who helped Michael and me with our moving preparations. And she's lived in a building that Michael's company built. Her name is Olivia Lewis. Olivia is a CEO who owns properties overseas. When I contacted Olivia, she said she had a bad feeling about the father and son at my home. Sure enough, they had arrived at our apartment and were arrogantly placing their belongings everywhere. Michael and I owned that apartment. I was the one on the lease since I was working from home, and I could leave if I wanted to. I told the two clueless men with a big smile. "That's totally fine. We're moving out of this apartment anyway." At that, his father, looking desperate, clung to me. "Don't cling to me looking so pitiful. It's embarrassing." I gave his father a condescending look, and he, on the verge of tears, tried to reason. "It's a joke, right? Tell me it's a joke." "It's not a joke, Austin. Michael and I decided this together. There's no way I'd joke about it now." The same man who was so smug about the living room just a while ago was clinging to me. He looked truly pitiable. Owen, wondering what the fuss was about, came down from upstairs and was taken aback by the scene between his father and me. "Dad, are you seriously trying to make a move on Michael's wife now? That's just unbelievable." I had a few things to say to Owen, who was making such remarks. To begin with, as soon as he arrived at our place, I was pretty pissed off seeing him search for his own room. It was not even a house he rented, so how could he just act so selfishly? Their actions were beyond my comprehension. If anyone should be saying unbelievable, it was my line. "You folks moving into someone else's house is just unbelievable. You didn't even have a lease. What made you think you could just move in and live here?" I decided to call Olivia. She's both the landlord of an apartment complex and its general manager. Sometimes she's referred to as the CEO and other times, just as an office worker. In short, she's a big deal around here. There should be no way they could talk their way out of this once she arrives. Olivia arrived at the parking lot and entered the room. She assessed the situation with me and the two men and seemed to get the gist. She was gonna contact Michael. After talking with Michael for a bit, Olivia seemed to have resolved the issue. Her face looked dead serious. "Did you handle the tax declaration after selling your house?" "No, not yet." "That's odd. We can't lease you the apartment without that. Please ensure you've reported it correctly, and then we may proceed with this room." Olivia was methodical in her approach. If you want to have a fair conversation with those people, you gotta come prepared with legal knowledge. But Michael must have known this too. He was well aware of his father's troublesome nature. His father was notorious for being self-centered and having affairs. I heard this story from Michael before he went on a business trip. Michael didn't want to tell me, but probably realized he hadn't acknowledged past mistakes and wanted to be considerate. When I pressed for details, apparently before Michael's mother left the house, his father had been cheating with another woman. When Michael's mother confronted, his father lashed out and was like, "Why don't you just leave?" And so, Michael's mother left. Before she did, she gave Michael a remorseful hug. Michael's mother was apologetic about leaving such a house to him. She left feeling guilty. Michael'd taken over all household chores. However, his father's philandering ways got worse, and Owen kept hopping from one job to another. Owen's become unemployed around the age of 28. He took the unemployment benefit with pride and eventually became a recluse. Feeling overwhelmed by taking care of Owen and their father, Michael decided to marry me. They were diligent in paying the utility bills, but sometimes skipped out on the insurance premiums and other minor fees. Michael even feared not being able to finish paying off the house loan. After all, realizing they weren't decent adults, Michael decided to move out. When his father was arguing with Olivia, Michael sent me a message. I was told to speak directly, so I stepped in between his father and Olivia. "Excuse me, but Michael and I are moving out tomorrow due to some reasons." "Hey, hold on, what's going on? I didn't hear about this from Michael. Shouldn't he inform his father when he's moving? He said he didn't want to talk to you about it. He thinks it's best to live separately from a philandering, selfish person like you and Owen." Saying that, I showed his father our conversation on WhatsApp. In our messages, Michael was voicing his dissatisfaction with his father. I was just a listener, but from what I indirectly learned, I had a very negative impression of their past deeds. Even during brief greetings, I realized that it was peculiar for his father and Owen to just move into our apartment. Just based on that fact, I felt that this father and son duo weren't up to snuff. His father, grumbling and not understanding, was then interjected by Olivia. Even if Catherine leaves, if you, Austin, don't declare the sale of your previous house, you won't be able to even rent an apartment in the future. But I have money on hand. Isn't that enough? No, it's not just about selling the house and being done, Austin. If you don't declare it, there are penalties. You'd be the one at a loss. Are you okay with that? Makes sense. If you're dealing with real estate, you'd want to ensure that all procedures are properly handled. If he did sell the previous house, he would eventually need to report it to the local authorities. Or perhaps he didn't even report it to the real estate agency, which would be suspicious. Considering these two, it was easy to guess they didn't bother to properly research. Looking at the documents Olivia brought, it seemed there might be taxes due. I wonder if they were even aware of this tax responsibility. When I checked with Olivia about the documents, she showed them right after arriving at the apartment. But it seemed like they didn't understand any of it, and I'd been getting questions about the documents from Austin and Owen. Wondered how long it's gonna take for them to get it. Michael and I had been living in this apartment for long, but we've done our research on how to go about the necessary procedures. That was why everything went so smoothly for us. There's always pros and cons to everything, isn't it just common sense to check things out? Yet they moved our place without giving it any thought, which I found questionable. The ones not thinking and just acting recklessly were Austin and Owen. In that moment, Olivia decided to give a warning to the two of them. Please don't assume you can just move into this apartment immediately. I'll check everything thoroughly and get back to you. Then, we can decide on the next steps. All right, got it. Seemed like Owen understood, as he sat quietly listening. Just to be safe, I decided to go back to my parents' house for the night, as the apartment was gonna be rented out by tomorrow. I didn't want to sleep with two guys, especially ones who lack common sense. Besides, I've been a respectable woman. Considering the risk of getting dragged into some mess, I decided to let Michael's father and his brother duo stay in my apartment. Olivia, whom I got along with at the real estate agency, suggested it too, so there might have been some real issues. If anything went wrong, it could ruin the moving plans with Michael. I decided to leave it in the hands of Olivia, the real estate agent, and spend a night at my parents' place. Since Michael's father and Owen were gonna be in the apartment, I informed Michael to proceed with the preparations for our new place. I'd made sure to be in touch with Olivia to check on how the two were doing. Later on, based on Olivia's recommendation, the apartment was rented to Michael's father and Owen for just a few days. To check if they had properly done the procedures at the real estate agency and if they had been paying their taxes. Regarding the house they claimed to be sold, she needed to contact the associated real estate firm. It turned out that not only had they neglected post-sale procedures, but they also hadn't paid their taxes. Moreover, Olivia reported them to the police suspecting they might have run off with just the sale money, hinting at a potential scam. It was decided to inform Michael's father and Owen staying in the apartment just to be safe. If false information was provided to the real estate company, penalties would surely be enforced. Not only would they take the taxes, but what if they also took penalties? I wondered how much would be left in dollars. According to what I heard from Olivia, it seemed that it might even go into the negative. Apparently, the reason was that they only got their house appraised by one real estate agency, which had good reviews and word of mouth. Sure, it's a hassle, but they thought no matter which real estate agency they asked, the estimate would be the same. Another thing they needed to do was a property transfer process. In simple terms, it's to change the property's name from Michael's father to the new owner. If there was any outstanding mortgage on the house, it'd be paid from the sale. But as expected, even though there was a mortgage left, they didn't pay it. It's turned into a case, with interrogations regarding the amount due and possible fraud. What's particularly bad was Michael's father insisting he knew nothing about it. As for Owen, he couldn't go back to his old home and he lost our apartment. That means he's gonna have to find a job with housing provided. However, he only has experience being a shut-in and living off his parents. Sure enough, my parents ended up taking him in. But they've said once he finds a job with housing, he's gonna have to move out. He's being rushed, but with some guidance from my parents, it seems he might get a job. Right now, I wish Michael's father and Owen would learn to live responsibly. It made me realize the importance of looking into things before taking action. Meanwhile, Michael and I decided to relocate overseas. Michael's hard work has been recognized, and he's offered a project abroad, in Spain. But the problem is, both Michael and I are Americans who can't speak a lick of any Spanish. We've been studying hard, trying to learn some basic conversation in Spanish. I wanted to be able to hold everyday conversations as much as possible, and more than anything, it was my first time going on a business trip abroad, so there was a part of me that was really excited. Eventually Michael's job is overseas, so he started looking at potential homes for us. He'd regularly send me messages or call. I felt blessed experiencing Michael's kindness, trying to ensure I wasn't anxious. Today, from the airport, I got a call from a worried Michael who is going to fly to Spain. "Are you okay? I know it's been hard because of my dad and brother." "I'm totally fine. I'm more excited about living abroad with you." "Good to hear." Hearing Michael's relieved voice made me happy too. We're now free from those two, and we're gonna enjoy our lives. To achieve that, we will keep studying a lot, learn things, and adapt to our new life. Everything is going to all right. And so, our life in Spain began. A child came into our lives, and our daily life changed as a family of 3. Cherishing our happiness, we continue to live strongly every day.